Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. We're talking today about event planning for social profits, and I'm Charmaine Hammond. I'm your host, and we have an amazing guest on today who I'm going to introduce in just a few minutes, Lisa Garrow, and she is phenomenal. I actually met Lisa at an event that I was attending as a speaker, and there was a great connection there. When I started to look at what Lisa was doing and her magazine that she's going to share with you later, I thought this is a lady I definitely need to get on this webinar series. So let me tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll introduce Lisa. I'm a professional speaker, and I speak all around the world on leadership, building healthy teams, and conflict resolution. And I attend a lot of events, and I also MC events. So what Lisa's talking about today is critically important for social profit organizations. I used to be the executive director of a couple of social profit organizations in Fort McMurray, and today's host is in Fort McMurray. It's Fuse Social, F-U-S-E social.ca. Wonderful organization. I just love this organization and all the support and capacity building and innovation that they are offering to social profits, not just in Fort McMurray, but all over. And so this webinar series that we're doing is part of Fuse Social's program to create innovation, provide information, and build capacity. So thank you, Fuse Social, for being our host of today. Now, you might be wondering, why should I be listening to this webinar? And I would love for all of you, I see all kinds of people joining us, so welcome. You'll notice that on the right-hand side of your screen, you have a chat room. So you can actually go in and type where you're from. I'd love to hear, I know Lisa would love to hear where you're from. Feel free to mention your organization. And you can also post questions and comments there. Part of what I love about webinars is that the learning happens not just from what Lisa shares and what I share, it happens from the conversation that goes on behind the scenes on the chat room. So please use that. But how about we get us started? For those of you that are listening on the web platform, why don't you type in the chat room who you are and where you're from? And I'll start talking about why this webinar is so important. So social profit organizations, I think, and I know Lisa, you'll agree with me, they're constantly planning events, whether it's their annual general meeting, which a charity is required to have. So a lot of times they create an AGM attached to an event. I know that social profit organizations are always fundraising. So they have galas, fundraising events. I go to a lot of them because I just love going to those organizations' events, conferences. I even see some social profit organizations doing annual staff recognition. So it isn't an event per se that's open to the public. But I spoke at one recently in Calgary, and it was for their 1,000 staff across Canada. It was a big deal, a big conference. I also see social profits trying to get the right people in the seat. So it's one thing to fill a room, but if it's the room of the wrong people, you may not get the results that you need. So it's getting the right people. One of the things that Fuse Social does that I love is they offer educational programs. I had the chance to teach 2 courses in the fall, and educational programs is something that social profits are doing. And what else do we have? Galas, all kinds of things. So let's see, we've got Virginia. Hi, Virginia. I'm so glad you could join us with K9 Commandos, who I love this organization, by the way, and they're doing great, great work with kids. We've got David in California. Welcome, welcome. I bet the weather is nicer there than it is here. And Bonnie Jean, who is actually, Bonnie Jean McAllister from Beaumont, Alberta, has been one of our sponsors for different events that we've done. Welcome. Leona, welcome. Amy in Fort McMurray from Fuse Social. Woohoo! Amy, welcome. And we've also got Jennifer from Calgary, Carrie from Calgary. We've got Gordon from Speakers Bureau of Canada, and the list goes on. Jean from Tsawwassen. Hi, Jean. So welcome, welcome. Please let us know what kind of events you're doing. So in addition to the list that I just read off, which is a pretty long one, what other types of events are you doing that in your organization you need to plan for? And let Lisa and I know if you work with external groups to plan these, or is it more a situation where your organization brings together a committee of staff or volunteers and you plan this on your own? Because we'll be speaking to both scenarios. Of course, this is being recorded, so I know all of you are going to want to give this information to your board and your staff. And I feel pretty confident in saying the next time you're planning your event, you're going to listen to the recording so that you can remind yourself of the juicy tips that Lisa gives you. Hi, Wendy. Wendy's saying hello. So let's introduce Lisa. I want to dive right into this amazing content. Lisa Garrow is with Candy Event Consulting. Now, she's got a couple of websites. If you're on your computer right now, why don't you pop on over to candyconsulting.ca. So Lisa has created effective connection strategies, and she's provided creative event support for a variety of businesses and community organizations, large and small, right across Canada. She's the owner of the event management and promotions company called Candy Event Consulting, making your team stronger. She's the founder of Candy Academy of Event Management and Promotions. She does networking, training, coaching, and support to organizations to help them make their event super successful. She also has a magazine, and I just want to shout out the magazine because Lisa, when I met you, I took a copy of the magazine and I read it actually page by page. It was so good. I couldn't put it down. The magazine, you can find it at momentsmagazine.ca. This is a fabulous magazine for folks who are planning events. The tips that I got out of that magazine, I mean, every page has it. I started thinking I'll just earmark a couple. Then it turned at your magazine and it's full of sticky and notes and earmark pages. So she puts out about 10,000 copies just to the partners in the Calgary area. Now, Lisa, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about who you are and what you do, but welcome. I'm so appreciative of you coming on today.
Thank you so much. This is fun. Excited about today.
Well, I know we were talking offline yesterday, getting ready for today, and we were talking about the fact that I'm sure often you get called into organizations to help navigate the challenges. I know I've hosted a lot of events, and when you don't do event planning, that's not my area of expertise. There has been so many things that I forgot, and one of the learnings, I was laughing with Lisa before we came on live today because I said, look how big my notes are. This is like a 20 font photo. And the reason I did that is I had a big learning at an event. I was showing up as a speaker, and each speaker would then introduce the next speaker. And they handed me the introduction, Lisa. I'm not kidding you. It was like a 10 font or maybe 7 font. I could not read it. I put my reading glasses on, and that's extremely uncomfortable when you're in front of a crowd. So later when we debriefed on that, and I sort of, I was able to wing it with authenticity and success in that case. But it was great learning because they had said that was the first event they had ever done, and they hadn't thought about how big do you print the font for the pages that people have to read. So that's probably one of many of the challenges you have to fix. So tell us a little bit more about what you do, then we're going to dive into some of the questions that came up.
Absolutely. So full disclosure, I actually keep Sharpies on hand all the time. And if you could see beside me, I do have my glasses here, but I have a piece of poster board right beside me. So I write notes very big and in color. So I am right there with you because it's one of those, you never want to be stuck when you don't know what you had planned to say, or maybe some of those key points that you want to make. I do have a very large sheet of paper here right beside me. So I am right there with you that I need it nice and big, and that way we can relax and answer some questions. So it's
Perfect.
Very fun.
Perfect. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's really amazing to me how lots of people that plan events today, and there's thousands of them just in our own community here, but they're really coming to events from all sorts of perspectives. And so I realized early on for myself, I grew up in a family that had been planning events for community work, we lived in inner city Winnipeg for a long time, and it just became part of our lifestyle where we were planning all sorts of events with the school, and with the community groups, organizations downtown. So my background is really in sort of a nonprofit world. But when you start to get into events that we're passionate about, everybody that's connected to a social profit organization, there really is that passion and the drive to make this work, because not because of necessarily the money, but we're there because we want to make a difference. And so there's a lot riding on these events, whether it's an online webinar like this, we would call this an event, or if it's something that you're doing in-house for your team, whether it's a team building type of an event, or if it's something that you're doing for the public to raise money or awareness. There's so many reasons we plan events. I actually call them connecting strategies, because a connecting strategy can be anything. And the importance of us really connecting well with our donors or our team, even with those that have been in the organization a long time, sometimes we get used to what's going on around us, and it's really hard to think out of the box. So I just love this space of really mixing it up, but doing it in a way that there's some kind of a method that makes sense for all of us. So we're all, that train's all on the same track, as opposed to us all in different directions. So it's very exciting to me when I see things working well. And the event is the event, but if it's something that leads to something greater relationships with your donors, greater unity with your team, that's what makes the difference, for sure.
Yeah, I so agree with that. And, you know, and event planning, I think, is changing. When I think back to my very first executive director job in the social profit world, it was actually in Fort McMurray, Alberta, and it was with a women's shelter. And I was new at event planning. You know, when I had to plan the AGM, I had no clue where to start. And of course, a lot of times when we're event planning, we just don't know what we don't know. And and then fast forward years later, I was then doing my own educational events. And I remember signing my very first contract with a hotel company. Now, this would have been a place, folks, where if I knew Lisa, I should have called Lisa, because I was ordering stuff left, right, and center. They said, you know, do you want biscotti with the coffee? And I said, absolutely, biscotti would be perfect. I get my hotel bill, and biscotti was $7.50 a person, and I ordered 2 for everyone just for morning break. So it was, you know, a fantastic learning, very expensive one for me. But that was a situation where I had never planned an event. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know what questions to ask. So why don't you kick this off, Lisa, letting us know what are some of the critical things that social profits need to know about event planning, and maybe what are some of the mistakes that happen a lot that can be easily solved?
For sure. I think the what I hear most often is the limited resources. And resources can be anything from your money to your staff to time. We're all pressed for time. And how do you manage that well? Like you said, the biscotti was, you know, $7 a person or whatever that is. That is one little piece of a whole plan that if you have a better understanding on how to be a good steward of that donor, the donor funds that are coming in. So if you're donor funded, there really is a responsibility in that we are using that money well, and that there is a good return on investment for that time that you spend. I do want to really stress is that return on investment isn't necessarily money in the bank, that we really have to step back and, like you say, ask the right questions on what is our goal in this? What are we trying to accomplish? And there might be a multifaceted plan in that, like really what do you want to get out of it? Do you want to increase awareness and have more people interested in taking a tour of your facility, for example? Do you want to make sure that you're bringing on new volunteers? Maybe you've got a really amazing set of volunteers, but they have been doing everything under the sun for you, and you just want to refresh that volunteer pool. People that can add new energy and new ideas and new skills to your organization. That might be a great result. All of this takes that forward planning where you're really taking the time up front to ask the right questions, to really look at your organization. I would say, so managing your resources would be a really big one for sure, all of those resources that you need to plan the event. But also really for you to take a look at overall, how does it fit into the structure of your organization? So an event can be a great one-time event, but I would say that it almost, I won't say it's not worth doing, but it's really important to leverage that event before the event and after the event. So I know that it takes a little more thought, and sometimes we come in on these events where we've done everything else in our job, and now we've got to plan the event because there's really no time left. It really, you're doing yourself and your organization a disservice by not really taking a look back and saying, well, if we were to start to talk to our volunteers, let's say 12 months in advance, what would that conversation be with our volunteers to get them really engaged in this event, to get them involved in promotion? I think that's one of the questions we'll talk about later, is how do you get people in the door? Yeah. And it's interesting how surprised we are when we're, let's say, a month out or 2 months out and nobody's bought tickets, or it's really limited, or it's our mother and maybe a couple of friends because they just know that we need that support. We've all had those events. But how important is it for us to actually get people engaged early on so they get that buy-in for what's going on in the process and to be part of the process? That's half the fun. If you go on a holiday, they actually say the anticipation of that holiday is actually just as refreshing in some ways as the holiday itself. It's the dreaming, it's the building, where are you going to go? The same thing with an event. You really have to put yourself in the position of your team members, your donors, the people that will actually show up to the event. If they haven't been part of the process leading up to the event, they're not really going to be that engaged about buying a ticket. They might do it because they feel obligated, or they're free that night and let's do it. But the more you can think beforehand, who are your major players in this event? Who would really be your greatest advocates? And how do you get them tied in early on in the process?
Yes, I love what you just mentioned about advocates, and you know this because you've heard me speak before. I really am a big believer of the power of people being a champion for you. And I've seen time and time again with events that I've hosted that the more people that I can bring on who might not ever attend the event because they don't even live close to where it's happening, but they know they've got a circle of colleagues and friends and family in a particular community. And when they know and love and believe in what you do, and they put it out to their masses through social media, through those one-to-one conversations. Hey, do you know what Fuse Social is doing next weekend, for example? That creates that good energy and that really, as good gossip, as my friend Dr. Shonda Perrin says, good gossip that people just want to share. So, and I've seen a lot of times that, I'm so glad you brought up this advocacy piece, because a lot of times when we haven't planned events, or, you know, we're doing an event on top of our other job, our real job at the organization, those are some of the things that get missed. Yet those activities of how people become champions and ambassadors for your program or your project are what will often put the right people in your room. So I love that you've brought that in. And you also talked about having goals for your event, because that's going to impact the type of sponsors that you look at, the marketing you do, and then of course knowing the outcomes that you want to have. We got a really great couple of great questions here, but it's okay. I'm just going to pop over to the question board. Virginia says she needs to raise some funds. They had their first movie with your pack night. Virginia works in the world of animals and is doing amazing things with animals, dogs, helping kids learn skills of compassion and resilience and bully prevention. And she does amazing work. And Virginia, feel free to go on and add on what I've missed. I love what she's been doing. I've been following her for about a year and a half. Now, the movie with your pack night, they sold tickets, they had raffle baskets. They did make a little bit of profit. She said about over $2,000, which she felt wasn't great, but there was lots of grant writing involved, which can be exhausting. And so it's a case of having to do everything and not much help, because Virginia also has a full-time job. So this is, you know, she's doing this like many of you on top of it. Any tips on how people can raise funds for their events and just manage it all? Because I think a lot of you have your full-time job and then you're also needing to plan events and do these other committee projects on top of it.
Yeah. So I really believe that there is, again, your ROI on that event is going to be all sorts of things. So really, to be clear, that it's multifaceted, but it does come down to money, and you really don't want to be spending a lot of time and really not seeing much of a benefit back financially. My really, over the years for myself, and maybe I've learned this, I bring my mother up a lot because she just has this incredible way of really smart thinking when it comes to social profit type of organizations and how to really engage people in that. And one thing I learned very early on, it's not about the ticket price. A lot of people get pretty stuck on the ticket price, a certain dollar amount, so we'll make X amount of profit. And it's important to look at your budget and make sure that everything's working. But really, you have to think bigger. And I think you're going to be talking a little bit on Thursday about that, about sponsorships and ways that you can actually bring people into an organization and get them excited about an event. What I have found the most effective has really been where we have, I used to be called, I guess, a bit of a matchmaker, where I would bring in a nonprofit, whether it's an event or some kind of a campaign, a promotion that they were working on, and really scouting very specific organizations or companies that had a certain bent or a focus that they had, or maybe a promotion they were working on, and where do they meet in the middle, where they're actually needing a voice. And a lot of organizations really have the voice that a lot of companies want. They want to be not only just seen as a community partner, but they do truly, many want to actually invest back in the community. They want to, they have a select amount of money that they've set aside for things like this. So don't ever be afraid. In the animal world, I would say I actually did a campaign where I brought a pet store that was doing an event on their parking lot. So this was in a different city, but doing an event on their parking lot. And there was a rescue society for animals as well that wanted to do some kind of an event. And it was this beautiful marriage where it made sense for them to partner, because it doubles your audience. So the people that would actually come to the event at the pet store would almost be doubled or tripled because of this organization. And there was another pet event that we were doing, or a campaign that we were doing, where it was a hotel that was pet friendly, and they were promoting themselves as being pet friendly, but no connection to a local organization or no kind of a give back in that campaign. And so it was, I'll say it was as easy as a phone call, but really that's what a lot of these organizations are looking for, is what is that, when you're doing your homework, what would be that connection? And it might sound like it's a lot of work to do that, but I'll tell you, it's a lot less work to do that than to sell an additional 100 tickets, cover an amount. Where if you have a sponsor, for example, maybe you can comp 100 tickets to some kids organization, or to a shelter or something, where you actually get some additional engagement in that event. So I would say the ticket price is definitely important, but at the same time, bringing sponsors on. There also, if I could say just quickly as well, there also are ways to actually reduce the cost of the event, which in essence helps you make more money at the end of the day as well. And we can get into that too if we have a minute at the end. But.
Awesome. Oh, we will find that minute for you on that. That's for sure. There's another question. This is from Roger with Speakers Bureau of Canada. Hi, Roger. Speakers Bureau of Canada is thinking about offering some short commercials from speakers that they've booked for different events to post on their conference website. Is this a good idea, Lisa, from your perspective?
So this would be speakers that you are, sorry, Roger, if I could just ask you a question on that. These would be speakers that are part of your bureau that you're wanting to promote. Is that correct?
Okay. And I'm just going to see, I'll just watch the chat box. And he's also saying as well, will I give him a chance to put that response in? He's also saying as well that offer speakers the opportunity to introduce and thank, or sorry, offer sponsors the opportunity to introduce and thank speakers, give them a link to your website, a mention during the main event with your conference, and if needed, even an appearance at the place of business. So we'll wait to hear from Roger on that one. But I think that's what he's indicating is using that commercial as a promotional tours or promotional opportunity. Is that something you're seeing that's working right now in the industry?
Well, very much, I think. Absolutely. So video is very important in lots and lots of ways. But what I say to most of my clients is that it's a way for people to get to know you. People have a very short, not only attention span, but they want to know that who you are is somebody that actually fits the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the words that you use are so important. And I think when we are booking a speaker, for example, there really has to be a very strong correlation to who we are as an organization. And I think the more that we get to know people, whether that's a scripted commercial or if it's them maybe just speaking on something that's important to them, a little bit about their passion, that's what people are going to pick up and hang on to. So I think it's a fantastic idea. I think there's ways that you can draft the copy on those commercials as well as digitals in a way that's very grassroots. That's the beauty of the internet now. So I've been in this industry for 30-something years. and for me, the growth of using social media as a way for people to get to know each other, I guess I'm in the camp that social media actually brings us closer. And so when you're talking about a speaker at your event or promoting the speakers that you are through the Bureau, that actually allows people to get to know them before there even is a coffee or a conversation about who they are. The more you can get them on video or have them sharing their passion, the better.
I just want to capture what you've said, Lisa, because I'm a speaker, and I'm going to share an example. When I was doing a couple of workshops with Fuse Social in Fort McMurray, so Bernie from Fuse Social had organized the different academic programs through their academic calendar, and there's a whole series of amazing workshops and educational sessions for the social profits. And one of the things that we did for ours was a couple of short videos, because while I knew a lot of folks in Fort McMurray after having lived there for many, many years, there was a lot of people that I hadn't met. And you're so right, when you can do those short videos, and in this case we put them out on social media, but it allowed people to kind of get a sense of who I am and how I'm going to talk about the topic that I was presenting on. And so when people show up for that event, what people were saying is, it's, you know, oh, it's so finally good to meet you for real. And so they felt like they already knew you, and it creates such a nice energy. So I loved what Fuse Social did in that case.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with a lot of people, there's a lot of competition for our time and attention. And I think it's our responsibility actually to really let people in quickly on who we are and what we believe and what we're about and how we want to contribute to what they're up to. And that's something that doesn't have to take a lot of time or money to do, but it's just a matter of putting it out there in a way that's really digestible and fun to watch and interesting and enough information, but not too much, so that there is, like you say, that connection that they already feel like they kind of know you already.
That's so true. And Jean from Tsawwassen here says it really worked for the Global Influence Summit. That was a conference that we actually held, and Roger and his team from Speakers Bureau of Canada were one of our sponsors there. And what we did is we created a sense of community ahead of time. So for all of the social profits listening, the more the sense of community, as Lisa's talking about, that you make people feel like they're part of the event, that they're getting to know people ahead of time. We created a private Facebook group. So as soon as people registered, they became part of this private Facebook group. And you know what was so cool, Lisa, is that we had people connecting on the Facebook group and arranging to meet for coffee. There was a few roommate situations that they were looking for roommates to share hotel costs. So the collaboration and I guess the feeling of connection that you mentioned that's so critical for the event, that happened long before people even showed up. So I love that you're talking about that.
Well, and if I could say to you in that same sense, is that a lot of nonprofits, they might be discouraged if there is that first event, you put a lot of energy into the plan and who's doing what and getting on site and the amount of work and money it takes to put off an event. What saddens me is that people will say, well, it didn't work. You know, there wasn't, you know, people are exhausted, we're out of money, there wasn't enough ticket sales to really make this worthwhile. what I always say to people, it's always that building. So when you go into this saying that there is a very, you're not just looking at that one day, you're looking at how does this build our community over time? And as you start to either repeat an event like that, do something similar in the future, those are the people that will be your advocates for the next time round. So don't be discouraged if it's a smaller event, if you feel extra exhausted at the end of this one and you don't know, even if there's always things that will go wrong, you know, and that's just the nature of events, whether you control those things or not. But it is important just to recognize that if you've done your homework before the event, and if you've really worked on that community, people will rally after that event and say, how do we make it better for the next time? So you take that debrief time, you take that time to really talk through it. And I always look at an event that it needs to be, my mantra really is that it needs to be affordable for your organization. It needs to be repeatable so that you can do it over and over. So that means maybe paring it down a little bit, or having the right people at the table when you're planning the event. And then it needs to be scalable. So that's the exciting part, where it gets to be not just about this event, but how do we scale this up and introduce more people to what we do? Those three items, I think for myself, that's where it all has to follow that checklist. And then I know that we're going.
Yeah, I love that you talked about that debrief time, because I've sat on lots of planning committees for different projects in the communities I've lived. And a lot of times, I think what happens with, especially with a committee, if they're not working with a professional like yourself to kind of guide them and navigate them through the process and ask the questions that they might not have thought of, the event's over, they sort of do the wrap up and then on to the next thing, back to work, back to our full-time job serving people. And
exactly.
One of the best experiences I ever had, I was a volunteer with an organization, and we did a review, and it was sort of a review of the event, and everyone went around and shared, you know, the learnings. And for many years in the corporate work I do with team building and training, I use what's called a review and learn process, and I know they use it a lot in industry. But basically, we do these 4 questions, and I know in your magazine you were talking about the different questions that people need to ask around debriefing. So, you know, the what went well, what were the wins, you know, what were the things even that you learned that you didn't anticipate. I remember in conversation with you, you were also talking about you have to look at what fell off the tracks, because that helps you solve it for future. And one of the conversations we had, I think it was yesterday offline, you were also talking about we have to remember those learnings so that we don't bring things that didn't work well into the next event. And that often happens, especially if committees change. So they look at what happened last year and they just replicate it, even if it's not exactly what you want to do for future. So I love that you've mentioned that. And the Facebook survey, thank you for all of you who put your comments on Facebook. The top questions that people had were, the most popular one, wasn't it, Lisa, was around finding sponsorship for your event. Not having systems, and I know that's what you do when you're working with people and coaching and mentoring them through that whole process, is that you help them create the systems so that they can use it again and again. And then marketing the event, and lack of time to get everything done. So let's talk about marketing for a minute. What are you finding right now in this world of events? What's working for Social Profits around marketing and promotion?
Yeah. Well, and I would say probably the shift has happened probably over the last, well, I won't say that it's the principles of getting people in the door for your event. So that's really the essence of marketing, is telling people what you're about. But the shift has been to engaging. So how is somebody responding back to that message? It's as important, and I would actually say more important, than us having our in traditional media, you know, in the past, and we put something out on radio and we do that commercial, and we're really good at crafting our message, but we really, I don't think we're great at getting the feedback on how are people receiving that message? How are they now responding to the message? And the beauty of social media now, I think, is really that we have that ability to have an exchange with the people that matter to our organization. in a way that we can put out a poll. We can put out questions on what kind of activities do you want to, or you were there last year, can you send us some photos or some footage, or can you tag us on some things that maybe were important to them. So there's really, again, a community feel to marketing now that I actually find very exciting, because everything that I do is really about relationships. So if it's not building towards a greater relationship with the people that matter to my organization or to my company, something's off if I'm just sort of shooting my mouth off on what I do great in the world or whatever that is. And I'll say, I say this lovingly because I have been part of sort of a social profit world for a long time, but we're really good at saying what we do matters to our community. And if we weren't here, people would go hungry. There would be no clean water in the world. Animals would be abused, and those things are really, really important to our community. But the reality is, if we don't make that connection with the people we want to speak to and engage them in a conversation, there will not be that growth and that ability to move forward with our organizations in a way that is meaningful. And we see that all the time, because we care passionately and deeply about our causes, and we will craft beautiful messaging around that and make beautiful videos around that. But if we truly aren't having this back and forth exchange with who our ideal donor might be for our organization and crafting our message around that conversation, we won't have the same kind of impact long term. And if we are not looking at a long-term plan in our organizations, then we may be looking at trouble down the road, because maybe we won't be either in business on the business side, or we might not be actually working in our communities, which I think is my motivation, is that these organizations make our community so much stronger. And if we truly aren't putting that conversation in place and the relationships in place that will keep us around a long time, and making a place where people can connect, they're going to have that common denominator maybe is the thing that you are putting out to the world, and the issue that you're solving. That's something that they're connecting on. So how do you really allow them in an event situation to connect around that and to share their stories around that? That's where you're going to get that impact.
Yes, yes. I just love what you're talking about. Stories, impact, relationships. There, on Thursday when I talk about sponsorship, you're going to hear me mention those words, and I'm going to keep repeating, like Lisa said, because what you're saying is so important from the whole perspective. And I love giving people shout outs. And, you know, one of the groups I attended, I think 2 of their gala events. It's their big fundraiser. They put all their, not all, but a lot of energy into this event, and it's Terra Association. Terra Association is a wonderful organization in Edmonton. And I remember the very first time I went to their luncheon, or I think it was a breakfast actually, and it's their gala fundraising event. And they had some of their previous clients do these beautiful videos, and it told the story in 30 seconds. You totally got from this client's perspective how Terra Association had impacted their life and impacted their child's future. I was a mess 90 seconds in. I'm grabbing for Kleenexes and tablecloths to wipe my eyes, but I immediately felt so
and your checkbook
and my checkbook, yeah. and that's the thing. I felt so immediately connected to this organization, and in a very authentic, real way. And so I love, Roger, earlier when you talked about videos. I think videos are a fantastic way to share your story. So for all of the social profits listening, I think a really good homework exercise is to go back into your organizations and actually have them listen to this conversation that Lisa's having and talk about, you know, how can we share our story? What are the meaningful impacts? Because I will let you know, with sponsorship, often what's important for them is not how many likes did they get on a Facebook post, it's how they shared the story, and letting people know why that sponsor chose to support that particular organization impact. So be creative. Think about how you can share your story through video, through pictures, through quotes, and what else for you? So social media. How is traditional media? Is that still important, Lisa, in the world of planning events for social profits?
Yes, I really believe it is. Again, because when you work with a traditional media outlet, and when we say that, we mean, and sometimes there's an assumption that we all know what we're talking about, but there's TV, radio, print, advertising, there might be articles that you might have written, there could be press releases that you could do. That's all a little bit old school. But what I love about the marriage of the two is that messaging is the messaging is the messaging. So that is my first job, is really to find the story, find the message. What is it that we're trying to say? And I actually run a workshop called Marketing Secrets for Event Success. And what I do in that workshop is I bring together media and marketing experts that come sit on a panel, and we've had discussions now for, I guess we're close to 4 years now in that one. But what we hear all the time is about how do you share your story on multiple platforms. So it's not about each one of those areas being distinct to itself. It's this marriage between, if I'm on radio, I used to be sort of in that world, but you're putting a commercial out, but then maybe there's an opportunity to do a minute about your passion for the organization, or something like you were saying about the people that we serve. So who are our beneficiaries, and how do we really highlight them? So you're using traditional media. I'm a big believer in traditional media, and in using that in a way that you can duplicate or use pieces of that message online as well. But when you talk about some of the radio stations or TV stations or some of these print, like we have a magazine now, they are building an audience that trusts them and believes them and really wants to hear what they have to say. So don't discount what we call traditional media in your package on doing your marketing, because I think that they have a voice that's still very vibrant. It has shifted over the years for sure, but there definitely is a way that they can help get your message out about your organization. And it's not just about your commercials. It's really building that relationship with these organizations in the way that they can tell your story and actually bring people to your cause in a way that's understandable to their readers or to their listeners, for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love how you've described that, the sort of marriage between the social media and the traditional media. We were playing with an event that we had that Jean mentioned earlier, the Global Influence Summit. One of the things that was really cool that we tried with this one last year, and it's definitely going to be one of those wash, rinse, repeat again for 2017 event, is as people registered, we asked them we actually provided them with some pre-written tweets and Facebook posts that they could just go out and share, like, hey, I just registered. And we invited them to do a short video, 30 seconds to 2 minutes, about why they chose to register for this particular event. And I was so amazed at what happened. I hadn't really tried this before. I've certainly done it for myself, that, hey, I just registered for this event, but I hadn't done this as a marketing campaign for something. What was really beautiful to watch was, it was sort of like social proof. People who had decided to commit time and energy and be at this event were saying, here's why I'm joining. Then it goes back to, like you said, they're building that community, and they become these champions for you. And what I found is, as planning that event, I started to know more and more about who was in my room. So as we were planning, we could think, what else is this group going to benefit from? How can we make this experience better? So I love that you're talking about, what I'm getting from you, Lisa, today is really about being innovative and being up on the trends. And at the bottom of everything you do, it's got to be about relationships, having a plan, having goals. What about sponsorship? Any thoughts or tips that you wanted to share on getting sponsors? I know that's a lot of the work that you support organizations with, as you're helping them map out their plan and navigating them through this whole process.
Well, and I would say that sponsorships, I use the word partner in a very wide sense, because you may not be thinking about a sponsor being somebody already in your circle. Quite often they are the people that are bringing your water in. Say you're a children's camp and you have all sorts of people that are your vendors that help make that camp happen all summer long. We did a gala for a kids camp, and it's amazing how many people were sort of coming out of the woodwork as soon as we asked to really support, because we, on that side, that you're actually invested in them, you're purchasing their goods, you're partnering with them on year-round on a lot of things. Sometimes those are the best people to go to, and if they can't or are not in a place to at that point, most often, if you were to ask them and say, would you know anyone in your circle that might be willing? You understand why we're here and how important it is that we're here. Could you suggest something? Or somebody else that we could talk to. And again, sometimes we feel intimidated by that because we feel like we're being salesy, or we feel like we're kind of asking too much of these people. But the reality is they want a relationship with you as much as you want a relationship with them. And this is taking that relationship to the next level. So not to be afraid to ask the question. If they can't, that's more love to them. But at the same time, a lot of people are just waiting for the question. And I think that when you make this an exciting opportunity for them to be involved, it's something creative and new, and you talk about your team that's investing in this and how much they're investing in it, and how much they want this to go well, a lot of people can't resist that, because they really want to see somebody putting their neck out there and saying, we are willing to go the distance and make this happen. So sponsorships, again, it's about your relationships that are building. But I would like to say too, and you were kind of alluding to that earlier, but to keep it simple, give them ways that they can actually be involved that are very simple to be involved. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to come to a lot of meetings or that they have to read a lot of paperwork or that kind of thing. Keep it really simple. And like you're saying about the populated tweets. So if you're able to write out a schedule on what you'd like them to say, some messaging they could put into an email, maybe a poster they could forward to friends. I have done trade shows where we actually have all of our trade show partners, so the vendors that are coming in, there's a requirement where they actually have little cards that they're putting out at their place of their retail location or to their network, where they actually are handing them out for us or mailing them out for us on their behalf. And again, it's about that partner saying, I believe enough in this organization that I'm going to not only tell you about it, but I want you to show up, and this is how I want you to show up. But really laying that out for your sponsors and your partners, potential partners, even if they're new to what you're doing, don't be afraid to just ask the question and say, we are so excited that this is going to happen. And you'll find that that momentum starts growing over time. And not that there's always going to be tweaking along the way and other people that come into that fold, but that's where it gets super exciting when you start to scale and bring more and more people into what you're trying to accomplish.
Boy, I want to just capture two things that you said, Lisa. These are like $1 million tips you just gave out. One of them was, you said, we have to ask, we have to let people know what they need. I had a really big learning once when I started planning some of the events that I needed to plan in my business and seeking sponsors. And I actually had a sponsor. You know, they were interested, and we were trying to find the fit. You know, how can I help them as a partner on this event? And he simply said, you know what, if we don't know what you need, and what you can do to help us is just let us know how we can be helpful, because we don't necessarily know what you need. So therefore we do nothing. And I thought, wow, you know, and then I had a friend who said the same thing, that if we don't hear from you that you need something, we assume all is good in the world of your event and we don't offer anything. So those two scenarios, I was like, oh my gosh, that was so helpful to learn. So thank you for sharing that. And the other piece that you brought up that I think was so important to just capture again in bold is when you talked about how you're marketing and what choices you put out there for people. Sometimes I see on advertisements, you know, you can have the early early bird special. You can have the sort of early bird. You can bring a friend. You can, bring a group. And you got 15 options on your form. And what I have found is that the more options, the less yeses, because it's not simple, as you said. So when we get bombarded with, I don't know if I want this option or that option, people pick no option. Yeah. And so I love that you talk about keeping it simple.
Yeah. I think that there also is that that space where, in keeping it simple, that I guess two things. So keeping it simple, where we feel like we're not giving enough information. And in my work in lots of different nonprofits, I actually in my truck, I used to have a little sticker on my visor before I go in to talk to anybody about my organization. It was TMI, and it meant too much information. So it was a reminder to me to say, I don't need to give them too much information or they're going to check out, because I know a lot of, like, I'm just touching sort of the surface with what I believe and care about this organization, but they are so brand new to this that I really have to temper myself and make sure I'm not giving too much information on that meeting. And there's always room for more down the road. But that was a big learning for me. I think in the, so keeping it simple for sure. And I think in the, sort of the understanding of where a sponsor is at, like you were saying, tell us what you need, so that you're being very clear. And one thing I guess I've had to learn this in my time working with organizations as well, and even with my own business, is that sometimes we're afraid of saying what we need in a very authentic and real way, because we feel like maybe they feel we're on just the verge of, everything falling apart, or maybe they really, like, if we really tell them we need more staff, or we tell them we need, more money for this part of the event, or if we really tell them what we need, what are they going to think? Like that we don't have our stuff together in a way that we can actually pull this off. But what I have found is the more vulnerable we can be in a true way, that it's true needs, it's things that really will help us move forward, that's where people get excited, because they start saying, you know what, I know a guy that has a truck, or know what, I know somebody that has that Friday off, why don't we get them involved? When you really put it on the line and you say, this is what's going to make this an event amazing, an amazing event, people are willing to step up, and letting go of our ego in it, where maybe we don't have it all together, and that's okay. And that's where people are going to buy in, and they'll be with you long term, because they get that you are really trying to grow something here, and it's okay to not have everything together. And those are the real and authentic conversations, I think, that will bring people on long term.
Yeah, and I think it speaks volumes. Like, sponsors, or your champions, your supporters, the businesses that you're going to be working with, when they, it's sort of that analogy. This is not my quote, but I love it. It's how you do something is how you do everything. So as you're working with them, if they're seeing this strong passion that you and your committee have in your organization, and you so believe in the work that you do and how important your services are, and you really want to make a difference through your event, and things might be a little bumpy, people can handle that. And often that's what inspires them to say, this is how I think we can help you. And I've certainly done that for lots of social profits that my friends work for, even my clients, that when they say, oh, we're not having the number of people register, and we're getting a little bit worried about the timeline is getting closer and closer. I know them, I love them, I believe in what they do. And now I can say, what can I do within my power to help them meet their goals? And I would get excited about supporting them, just like all of you have all done this as well for friends and colleagues and other organizations. So here's a question. I think it's a great way to start pulling this together, Lisa. So I know that you do a lot of work with organizations to help them in the consulting and the coaching that you do to take them through that whole planning process. One of the questions that came in by email from someone who couldn't be with us live today, but will listen to the replay. She's got an event coming up in about 9 months, so that gives some planning time. Whew. A little bit of planning time. But her question was, you know, what's the first 2 or 3 things? They have an event, they have a date, and they have a location, and it's sort of a fundraising. It's the annual fundraiser. And she's new on a committee. Her question is, what do I do now?
Oh, right from the beginning?
So if you don't have to lay out the whole process, but what would be, you know, a couple of things? Yeah, because that's a whole other week-long webinar, that would be. But if you're starting out on planning an event, what are a couple of things that you think are key right in the beginning of getting ready to plan your event?
Definitely. So number one, actually, maybe can I do a little I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, perfect.
In our very first magazine, we did something about getting clear on your connection strategies. So there's some questions in there. There is an online version that you can take a look at. But really, it is about asking the right questions up front on what you want to get out of the event. So is this about raising money? Is it about your awareness for your organization? Are you trying to generate some more volunteers or excitement around your organization? Asking those questions up front. And like we talked about earlier, really analyzing your wins, like what has gone well in the past. Even if this is a brand new event, I would say in connecting with your donors or connecting with your community, what has worked in the past? You might even want to put out a survey to those in your community, internal and external, about what is important to them about the organization. Really get your head wrapped around, why are they there? Why are they showing up? Why are they receiving your emails? And you might even want to section those groups off, like where you've got a certain group of donors, and really take a look at why are they involved. Maybe they've helped on committees in the past. So it's really, I feel very strongly on the digging into your past, digging into your organization, really understanding who is involved and why are they involved. That would be number one for me, but I know that's a very big picture. We do also a workshop called Face to Face, and it's about your event planning fundamentals. So this is one that we have just started in the spring, but one of the biggest questions was, and if you're a smaller organization, I would say even if you're a bigger organization and there's one department handling that event, it's really easy, I guess, to say, oh, we'll do it all. Or Nancy, she's really good at people and decor and booking facilities and whatever. So we're going to just give her sort of this whole lump of stuff. But what we did in the last workshop was actually define all of the team roles. So even if one person wears multiple hats, really important for them to understand with that hat on, what do they need to accomplish in that? So they might be in sponsorships, or they might be in logistics, or they might be front of house, or they might be somebody that's doing setup and tear down. So I think really defining sort of in a big picture way, who would you need on your team, helps you then plug in people to those roles in a way that's meaningful to them. That people sign up or they're volunteering for things, or they understand what role they would play, which also helps with burning people out or avoiding burning people out. If they really know what the expectations are for that role, I think that really helps. And then from that point, you start building plans around each of those areas. So so I could, go into that, but I think that as far as setting yourself up for success, that really would be probably the first couple of pieces I would do is really to get that all laid out so that people know what they're signing up for. And then if you have some holes in that plan, or if you really don't understand it, it gives you something to move forward and ask people that are in that circle, and maybe somebody that's been involved in the organization in the past, to fill in some blanks, because it really gives you that foundation you need to actually build a great event.
Beautiful. Wow. We're going to have you back for another webinar, Lisa, because the whole event planning world is so big, and I love the fact that you help people through it. But boy, oh boy, we could go off on so many other topics. I love what you shared today, and again, everyone, this is being recorded, so you can totally share this with your boards, your committees, your staff, and let them know that they can watch this over and over again. I'll be sending you the link. You'll actually get an automatic link sent out to you. And also, I think on the screen, Lisa was mentioning the webinar I'm doing on Thursday. It's a free webinar, and it's on sponsorship. So there's a little button you can press where you can get signed up. I'll also just send you the link though. Lisa and I are going to work on a blog, an article about today to capture some of the points, and I'll put the link for this in there, and I'm going to put all of Lisa's social media links. I would like to suggest, and I've had Lisa, some folks that have been coming on saying they've worked with you and they loved working with you, by the way, so I wanted to make sure that they knew I saw those comments. The word was actually, she's amazing. So you've got some real fans out there. And what I'm going to do, Lisa, is share all of your email handles and links with people, because I think that one of the ways we can learn is to stay in the energy of people who are doing what we want to learn about. So if people are following you on all your different social platforms, and we can get the link to the magazine out for people for the resource that that you mentioned as well. But the main website, Lisa, do you want to give out your website where you'd like people to go and stay in touch with you?
Sure, absolutely. So the umbrella organization, my company is Candy Event Consulting, and you'll find us at candyconsulting.ca. And our phone number, if you want to dial through, we do have a 1-800 toll-free line. So if you are anywhere in Canada or wherever you are, we're happy to chat with you. It's 1-800-560-8180. And we'd love to chat with you. There's links on Candy Event Consulting to our academy and also to the magazine website. So there's 3 different websites that you can take a look at. If you're looking specifically for the magazine, we've got 2 issues that are out so far, and they're at momentsmagazine.ca, and you can link through right to the digital versions of those copies right from that homepage. So that'll be easy for them to link through.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. I'll make sure I get those all out to you. And we've got some people saying, thanks so much, ladies. Lots to digest. Great advice, great webinar. I love it. So thank you all for joining us. I can't wait to hear about your next event and what you're doing, and how can we support you? You know, let us be champions for you. So
thank
stay in touch
so
with Lisa and I. Yeah, and Lisa, thank you again for just being so open and generous with your information today.
Absolutely, anytime.
Thank you. And again, to Fuse Social, I just so appreciate what you do to bring information to social profits. Thank you so, so much. And I'll be putting their link as well in the resources. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Thank you.